called the Benoni. There's the Nigun that the Frierdiker Rebbe of Yosef Yitzchak really liked. He didn't compose it. It was composed by a Yid named Reb Aaron Charitonov from the Chabad family Charitonovs. But when the Frierdiker Rebbe heard it, he really took a liking to it, and it gehasen the Zingen Asachmol. It goes like this. If you don't know it, listen, then maybe you can Tafsich Hashem, and you can sing along. Ay la ra ay 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 da da ay la ra da ay 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 la ra ay la ra ay la ra ay 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 really repeat it, but I'll go to the next stanza. Ay la the third part, yeah, 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 So what's the meaning of the Nigun? What's the meaning of this Nigun?
Whatever you think.
No, that's not the way we learn it in Lubavitch. In Lubavitch, in Chabad, every Nigun has a meaning. It's not just ay 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 ay. Every Nigun zoktepis. In Lubavitch, in fact, we don't say in real, authentic Lubavitch, we don't say zinga Nigun. We say zoga Nigun. Why zoga Nigun? Because jeder Nigun zoktepis. Every Nigun has a message. Zoktepis. So what's zokt der Nigun? So a kurze maisa to tell you what this Nigun says. But I was told this by my teacher, by my shpir, Reb Melech Tzibel in Morristown, the yeshiva in Morristown. Oh, Rashol, yeah, it was a tighter yid, a going. And we were sitting by a Fabrengen, and we sang out that this Nigun, Yosef, this Benoni Nigun, and Chaim, I was the mashpia, let's say, was here, and I was sitting right next to him, right? Next to my teacher, my mashpia. And he already took some mashke, wasn't, shikr, but he was good, belly gilifin, right, exactly. And we sing this Nigun, and we sing zusammen the Nigun, and it's 50, 60 guys in Beis Medrash, and it's a mehed. And all of a sudden, he takes his fist, and he starts, and he gives me a zetz in my arm. Ein zetz, and he was a tall guy, and he was strong. And I felt it, I was like, good to zetz. But it came from his love, it came from his closeness. And then he said, he asked me, was made the Nigun, Chaim? My name is also Chaim. Was made the Nigun? So he says, this is what it means. Adu allein weis, in Yiddish. Adu allein weis, wie die Darzan, Pavos bist du nicht also? If you yourself know how you should be, why are you not the way you're supposed to be? That's what he said. He heard from Chassidim is the meaning of this nigun. So, to feel that, to feel it, you need to praying for hours and say l'chaim, and it's not the chatztayim shalosh, a quick fix.
Why all the Chabad Nigun don't have words?
First of all, some do, but many don't, because words are limiting to what the words mean. If you want to experience what we call Ein Sof, infinity, you go in a galgal, you go in a circle. Right. And in a circle, it's circle, it's round, so haptish. In other words, no endpoint. In other words, like this. Hoshia esamecha, Hoshia esamecha. So that's it. Hoshia esamecha. It's a beautiful nigun. They used to sing by Farbrengens. By the way, who made Hoshia esamecha? Avram Tversky, Dr. Tversky. Tovshin Yudches Yutes. I forget, he said that Simcha of his brother, he was in Yerushalayim, and he composed, and Bashgocha Pratis, his name was Shia Esamecha. When he made that song, the Chassidim came from Eretz Yisrael, because they came to the Rebbe for Tishrei, I think it was this, and they sang it, and the Rebbe loved the nigun, and he said, Mizal Zingim Mizimra Sa'aretz. And then the Shlach, the Meraglim, Mizimra Sa'aretz, and they started to sing, but that Afa became. What's your first name? David? Yossi. Okay, Yossi. But Afal became, nevertheless, that nigun is limited to the words. Yeah. So in other words, what's going to be the result of a nigun like that? Whatever the thought and meditation and feeling associated with diverte. If you want to feel something that is kind of beyond a limitation, so that's Bechlal. But again, there are plenty nigunim, especially Dveikus nigunim. Dveikus nigunim in Chabad, there's a lot of Dveikus nigunim. There are two Chassidus that have mostly a lot of wordless nigunim, Mozhitz and Lubavitch. Mozhitz, the Rav the Mozhitz Rebbe. And they have tremendous nigunim also with a different knech, with a different emphasis than Lubavitch. There's a little more kind of the simcha element in Lubavitch. Yeah, Leibedik, you're right. Yeah, you're good. Good, but Lubavitch is authentic Lubavitch. The way Lubavitch is the Vekas. And the Dveikus in Lubavitch is not like the Breslov Dveikus. That's another discussion. What's the difference in the Dveikus in Lubavitch and Breslov? We won't go into everything because we won't get finished. But the Nekuda is that these Nigunim are powerful. So imagine if you sit Shabbos at your table with your children. You're all young alike, you're all young, Lefierich, and you have growing children. Chaim was telling me he has a 4-year-old, Knei Hud, and a 2-year-old, and it's only the beginning, right? And they're going to grow, and you're going to have more children with Hashem, and you sing with them Nigunim. How did I learn? When Shalom and I, we used to live in East Flatbush, it's a section in Brooklyn, right? Today, Lubavitchers are bringing back the white faces. But when Shalom and I were growing up, it was a war zone. It was really a war zone. I mean, he lived on Remsen at Avenue A, so that was still a little. But where I lived in Clarkson, East 50, it was much worse there. And I had an aunt, I remember, a survivor. She lived on, I think, Snyder or Clarkson. I remember, she lived like 4 or 5 blocks, right? And we were scared to walk there. So we used to drive, and I have a vision till today of these big yellow lights, like I'm going into a ghetto, and I was a ghetto. And it's very, very scared. I don't know if you ever mugged. I was mugged at 9 years old, 1969. 1970, my sister Rachel and I were mugged. We were mugged by a big African American. He came over to us with a grace stecken. He had a big stick and he gave us your money and had. Yeah. You have to understand, I speak in many different venues and all kinds of places.
Okay, I can also speak.
I remember a story within a story. There's a psychiatrist, a guy from Brooklyn, actually moved out to California, to the Silicon Valley. It's next to Palo Alto, where all the big companies are, Hewlett Packard and those. And I invited him. Yes, you got his story. I invited him to Marin County. Marin County, where I was such a liberal place. I mean, like, it's the seat of liberalism. The San Francisco Bay Area is very liberal. And Marin was liberal, but toich liberal. And he starts speaking, and he was a real Brooklyn guy. This guy was fire, and he didn't care. And he says, and the Schwarzer did this, and the Schwarzer did this. In his talk, and he's a psychiatrist. Half of my oilim walked out. Yeah, I invited him to my house, and they walked out. You call them Schwarzer, it's derogatory, it's like saying, N-I-G, that we're right. It's not something that, whatever. Anyway, listen again. Let's go weiter. And so, when you sing a Nigun, so how did I learn Nigunim? How did I get a geschmack from Nigunim? My father's he's from Romania. He was a survivor from Romania. And he came to Lubavitch Yeshiva at age 13, 1950, right? The poverty was great. They were in the Maborot, in the transit camps over there near Netanya, and he was walking around Barvas, unzoken, didn't have socks. That's how poor they were. And he had Dreitzich. And this camp had a lot of Romanian, and the organizer sees this boy walking around and says, maybe you could do me a favor. I have to make an announcement in Romanian. I don't know. I know Yiddish, Russian Kodesh, and Hebrew, whatever. My father says, yes, I know Romanian. So he makes an announcement that come at this and this time, come here, there, whatever. And he says to my father, what can I do for you? You did me a favor, what can I do for you? So my father says, you know what you can do for me? When I was in Romania, my Malamed told me that I should go to a yeshiva. And I learned by him that there's such a thing called a Navi. I never saw a Navi. I'd like to see a Navi. I want to see a Navi. So he says, you want to see a Navi? There's a Navi in Bnei Brak. How do you get there? Take this bus number 54. The same bus goes on Jabotinsky in Bnei Brak, by Akiva and Jabotinsky over there. That bus takes you from here, you transfer and go there, and go to this address, knock on the door, you go to a Navi. My father comes home, he tells my Zayda, who was a real Romanian Shiite, and he thinks my father's cuckoo, but if his son wants to go to a Navi, he'll gain Lenin, and he gave him a few piasters, that's what was called them, piasters, not shkolim, piasters, Liro at the piasters, and he gave him, and he got on the bus, and it's a whole maaseh, the way my father says it, is it take an hour, and with all the details, I almost vomited because of the diesel fuel, I got some maaseh. Anyway, he gets there, he knocks on the door, the Gabba of the Chazayin Ish comes to the door, and he says, Yingel, was willst du? He says, ich will send the Navi. He says, Yingel, gave pfeifen, dreh a zweiten cup. He was 12 years old. 13, yeah. Get out of here. My father, and he goes back into the house. My father knocks again. And he comes to the door, he says, Yingel, the gehst nicht weg, it's a brechende Beine, you don't leave, I'm going to beat you up. And my father says, okay. And noch a paar minutes, noch a few minutes go by, he knocks again on the door, and he says, ich hab gehört, that is du a Navi. I heard that here there is a Navi, and I want to see the Navi. He sees now, this Gabba of the Chazayin Ish sees that this boy really means business, and he really meant business. He was told there's a Navi here. So he says, okay, make with you a deal. I'll go into the Chazayin Ish, and I'll ask the Chazayin Ish if he wants to see you. And if he wants to see you, can't start ranking, and if not, you have to leave. So my father says, okay, but you my father, you know my father. My father's a Romanian Shiite. He don't take no baloney. So he says to the Gabba, you understand, the Gabba wants to throw him out and beat him up, and he tells the Gabba, listen, I want you to go to the Chazayin Ish. He didn't know Chazayin Ish. I want you to go to this Navi here, and tell the Navi like this. Aaron Dalfin, that's my father's name. Aaron Dalfin from Romania is gekommen sein a Navi. So the Gabba says, okay. Comes back a few minutes. Comes in, and on the table there was some cookies and soda. Chazonish comes out, and what's my father going to say? He say, Navi. I say the Navi. He was told this is a Navi. He had no idea. That's, And the Chazonish says, "Was kann ich tun für dir?" He says, "My Malamed in Romania told me, as ich soll gehen lernen a yeshiva when I come in Eretz Yisrael. So I come to Eretz Yisrael. So I'd like to learn the yeshiva." He says, "You want to learn the yeshiva?" And he picks up a phone, and he calls something. The Gabba goes, and I forget what the Chazonish yeshiva was called. Still today, I forget the name. Nebrak. No, not Panovich. Another yeshiva. Yeah, I'll remind myself later. Anyway, and he comes and he takes my father from the Chazonish's house to his yeshiva. My Zayda didn't know anything about it. Because as far as he knew, he's going to see the Navi, and that's it. He's in the yeshiva. 2 days go by. He makes the Vayivrach. I left the race from yeshiva. He leaves the yeshiva. What happened? He was in Nusach Sfarad. Chassidin daven Sfarad. So in the yeshiva was Ashkenaz. And my father got nervous. As at the Zverter, it's not many chilukim, but if there are differences. And it made him nervous. So he didn't like that. Second thing is he met his cousin Mendel Schechter. They're a family in the Visionitzer, known in the Visionitzer community, the Schechters. They're really Dalfins. My last name is Dalfin, and the Schechters are all Dalfins. People don't know that, but they're all Dalfins. The Elte Zayd, the Schechter, changed his name from Dalfin to Schechter because he wanted to avoid the draft, the army at that time. Anyway, so he sees that he's wearing a clean shirt and a clean jacket and clean hosen. My father's in ganzer schmutzig. There was no schmutzig. So he says, Mendel, they knew each other from Romania. He says, Mendel, was bist du rein und ich bin schmutzig? So he says, Aaron, how did you get to the Chazonish yeshiva? So he told the story. He went straight from Chazonish's house. The Menal came and took him in. He says, they only give you one set of clothing. But I got to the yeshiva through the Vada yeshivas. And when you get into a yeshiva in those days, the Vada yeshivas, they give you zwei hemder and zwei jackets. And therefore you change, and merely you're cleaner. So my father says, Mendel, ich will das. So between the nervousness that he had from the Nusach Ashkenaz and not Nusach Sfard, and not having, now he has to go for Herzich. So Mendel taught him Eilu B'tzias and Gurkelent, and he had a Faher by 3. He doesn't know Rabbonim, Talmid Chachamim, and they're Faheading him, and he's doing nicely. Knock on the door. Who comes in? Zusha the Partisan. Zusha the Partisan was a known figure in the Lubavitch called Zusha Vilmovsky, but he was a partisan, guerrilla warfare in the Russian army. Almost also was a short guy with a very short neck, and he looked like a fighter. And Zusha was the Nitzig for the Lubavitch Yeshiva. Everyone had a representative. Zusha was the Nitzig for the Lubavitch Yeshiva, and Zusha came in. And when he came into the room, he had to talk to the Rabbonim. The Draya Rabbonim said, Mashem Yotzedover. Hast a good cup, you have a good keppele, kannst verstehen a good Stück Gemara. My father Poshet told me Poshet Sachen, how they asked and they tried tricking him and he answered them. They said, this guy has a good head, this boy. Anyway, and when Zusha came in, they said, Mashem Yotzadova, you do belong to Lubavitch Yeshiva. That's how he got to Lubavitch. We come from Visionitz, from the Tata Zayt, and Polish, the Razminich Chassidim from the Mama Zayt. What's Lubavitch? We have no shaykhah, right? I joke around with the Spitz Lubavitcher, the Lubavitcher, like the Rabashkins and others that come from 150 years, Lubavitcher Chassidim. I joke around, I say, I'm more Chassidish than you. Because most of you, not Rabashkin, but others, they don't come from 150 years. The most they come is 100 years. They're Ashab, and I can give you names and dates, but I don't want to because I don't want to put anyone in bad light. Because they don't like hearing that. But I know, because I'm a historian, I know the dates and the people. I know if they were Lubavitch Chassidim or Kappas Chassidim, and what the fighting was between the Zaydas. Anyway, this Negeya. What's Negeya is, but I come from 150 years back to the Antoniya Rebbe, back to the Kosover, back to before that, the Zid Shoiver. My Zaydas used to sing, "Es brennt a fire in Zid Shoiv." So we come from Emetzere. So we came to Lubavitch. This is how we got to Lubavitch. So he went into yeshiva at 13 years old. No, in yeshiva 13, 14, 15, 16. And my Zayda wanted him out, and he took him out, and then he had payas, and then they took off the payas, and his mashpia gesagt, what are you, a behemoth, a gay arbeit, and 15 years old, you're going to work. He says, in Europe, it's mega arbeit when you're 15 years old. He says, that's Europe, but that's millennium. And the Rebbe wrote him letters. My father got letters from the Rebbe. How did he write his first letter to the Rebbe? Listen to this. He was walking in Tel Aviv. My Zayda lived in Tel Aviv, in the Dizengoff area. Anyway, so he's walking, and a Yid comes over to Vaisa Bart, and he says, Yingel. He says, Yingel, does gehört from Lubavitch Rebbe? So he was already in the yeshiva, but in those days, they didn't tell boys about, even in our days, we didn't know much, you know what I'm saying, when we were boys, and those days, Koshke. So he says, Lubavitch Yeshiva says, yes, the Lubavitch Rebbe. Yes, the Lubavitch Rebbe, but what's up with Lubavitch Rebbe and Lubavitch Chassidim? So he says, schreib zum Rebbe. Write to the Rebbe a letter. So he says, what am I going to write? Oh, and he told him that his father wants him to leave Yeshiva. I think it was 14 or 15. So he says, write to the Rebbe. He says, was geht schreiben? He says, schreib das. Schreib as Yoinet, the Yid had geheißen Yoinet Edelkop. Maybe as a Muncie, there's the Edelkop. And Yoina Edelkop had the getroffen in Tel Aviv and the gas, and at the gezukt, those gang, you should go and you should write a letter to the Rebbe. That's what he did. That was the first letter that he wrote, and the Rebbe answered. In those days, the Rebbe answered bocherim and boys and young people. The Rebbe was writing a lot more letters. He was younger, and there was more, and there wasn't so many people. V'chulu. And he wrote, and the Rebbe, wrote him, and the Rebbe basically said, you're going to go out of yeshiva at this age, and there's a whole other hemshech ha'maisa why he stayed, but Bekitzer, he stayed, and that's how he became a Lubavitcher, and that's how I was born into a Lubavitcher family. Voi b'schusoi. So, if I was to say l'chaytos, I don't remember. Oh, because I was telling you Chaim about the Nigun. So, growing up in East Flatbush, where we grew up, so Shabbos day, what did my father do? He would keep us at a table, and he would sing Nigunim that he learned, he would sing Nigunim for an hour at the Shabbos table. And we're kids, and we want to run around. And my father didn't let us. In those days, it was tough business. You ran around, and your backside felt it. And we were scared. And guess what? From being scared to sit at the table and then getting into it, I started to enjoy the Nigunim, and that's how I learned Nigunim. I learned a lot of Nigunim sitting at the Shabbos table, and my father would close his eyes, and I'm talking about Vekas Nigunim. You're not talking about La La La, Mordechai Ben David, and Avram Fried, and Daskel, and Baskel, and Haskel. You're talking about Chassidish Nigunim that he would sing it slow, and he would sing it for 15, 20 minutes a Niggun. It's a gate of the nerven, oh my gosh, right? And that's what I grew up with. So when I went to yeshiva in Morristown, I got older and cleaner and wiser, and I started to understand more about these nigunim and sing with the older bocherim, and it all came in. So that's why I said to you, Chaim, that when you sing at the Shabbos table nigunim with your children, and not to exclude the others, but also these type of nigunim, you should know it can make a difference. It will make a difference in their life. I'll tell you another story. Before they hired me to be the rabbi, the shliach of this Marin County in 1984, so they asked me to come. I was a yeshiva bacher. I was from the older shluchim in 1983 in the Lubavitch yeshiva called Oyer Elchanan Chabad. That was a yeshiva that Reb Simcha Wasserman, whose father was Reb Elchanan Wasserman, and he had a yeshiva in LA, and he made Aliyah, went to Eretz Yisrael, he opened yeshiva there, so he gave over the yeshiva for $1 to Lubavitch, to Rabbi Reichik and Rabbi Kunin, and he had one tonight, just please keep the name of my tata on the yeshiva. So they said, no problem, but we want to, it's Chabad. So he said, can we make a merger? Oir Elchanan Chabad. He said, yeah. Hence, and the Rebbe spoke, Chavdalah Tevis, Tov Shalom Ches, I remember the Fabrengen. The Rebbe spoke about the name, that here the Welt of Litoyim, the Litvische world, and the Lubavitch world came together through this name of the yeshiva, Oir Elchanan Chabad. Yeah, there's a Sikha. Yeah, there's a Sikha. And I learned there as an older Baruch Shliach in 1981, 82, 83. So this, after my Chaveda went back, we stayed on to help another shliach whose son had meningitis and he needed help. But the summer, I was there this summer, and I'm in the Chabad office, what was called Westwood. The first Chabad house in the world was in California, next to UCLA, called Westwood. At a time with a lot of hippies and druggies and and then this was a happening place. Meditation. This was a happening place right next to this great school of medicine and others, UCLA. Yeah, but not the way it was there. I remember even in my days in 1982, I was there for a Shabbos once, and Friday night they wanted to show me what's going on. So I just to walk down the street in Westwood Village, you bumped into all the Nekavas just walking around. You know what I mean? It's like you couldn't move. Everyone was. It was a place that was happening. I don't know if you say Lahavdil, but like Ben Yehuda was years ago, or maybe today, Emek Rafayim and Eretz Yisrael. Anyway, the kids, this is what happened. So what happened is Akunin had the first Chabad house. He opened it in 66 or 67. He was first in Fairfax by Rabbi Reichik and the Ungarische Yidden over there. And he would come in with college students who that the pants were torn, they had ponytails, they smelled, v'chulu, v'chulu. And he brought him into a shield, you know. So which shield? The Hungarian shul. They wanted to kill him. So they came to Rabbi Reichik, who was the Frierdiker Rebbe Shliach yet, in 1949 he went out. And they said, Rabbi Reichik, get him out of here with his people. These aren't Yidden for us. We don't really, they had no idea. They came from Hungary, they came undersort. So Kuna saw that here in Fairfax, it's like in Williamsburg and Borough Park, he ain't going to make a Chabad house at that time, It ain't going to fly. So he moved across town to Westwood, which was the scene, and he opened the first Chabad house on Gailey Avenue, 741 Gailey Avenue. Not 770. He built later a 770 on Pico. But, yeah, right. But this was 741 Gailey, and it was the first Chabad house. So I happened to be in 1983, I think, in Chabad house. I was there for something. And there was a Yid named Reb Shlomo Schwartz. He's Reb Neil Memes. He was called Schwartzy. And he was like the first Chabad campus rabbi. He came out in 69, 70 to UCLA. Kunin brought him out. And he was a very, very interesting person. He can daven for hours, and at the same time he could wear a psychedelic, colorful shirt with interesting words on his yarmulke, metabor bizda, and he was mamish. I'll give you just to understand. I have to say this the right way. A very famous singer who one of his ways that he dealt with singing and different things was he embraced women, okay? And he came over to Shleimer. They were good friends. And he said, Shleimer, his name was Shleimer. He said, Shleimer. He said, Shleimer, just one time. I feel I don't want to be, you understand, right? If you don't, you'll ask me afterwards. So he says, just a little, one time. And Shleimer Schwartz said, no way, I'm not selling out my board, mine Chassidishkeit and mine yeshiva to be, for the sake of Kiruv. That's what type of Yid he was, okay? Outwardly, you would think he's a hippie from Berkeley and Westwood with his colorful shirt, but the board is got full of board, and again, inside a stick brand fire. So I knew him. Yeah, I looked up to him. He was older, and everyone knew that he was the first Chabad rabbi to go onto a campus. You understand that? This was an innovation. This was a chiddush to go out to a college campus and stand on the campus. The students then was radicals, and I'll give you a story. In Buffalo, another Chabad rabbi, Rabbi Garari, maybe he's come here, I think, Nosson Garari, an uncle, I think, of this Garari here in Tom's River, relative.
Distant, but
Yeah.
From
So
Montreal?
his brother from Montreal, his younger brother, Nosson.
Oh, he's in
So
Buffalo.
he was in Buffalo. Today he lives in Muncie. Anyway, see, he was out on the campus in '71, and Buffalo was also very radical. A lot of very bright PhDs, Nobel Prize, but a lot of radicalism in Buffalo. The college Ithaca in Buffalo State. Anyway, and he's there, and he's a short guy. So he makes Friday night, and he makes Shabbos, and he wants students to come. So he gets on a little kestel, a little box, stellt sich weg auf den Kestel, and he starts darshaning. He starts, guys, come, we have a Shabbos program, a Shabbos meal. Good, okay. The students start gathering around him, and they said, oh, we're going to have fun with this guy. They say, Rabbi, you're a rabbi, yeah? He says, Rabbi, could you tell us what the law is? Are you allowed to take the pill on Shabbos? So he says, a pill on Shabbos? Well, he says, normally medicine, you're not supposed to take a Shabbos. If it's a pikuach nefesh or something else, yeah, you're allowed to take it. But otherwise, you should avoid taking the pill on Shabbos. And of course, they all broke out in laughter. The pill means the contraceptive pill. They have to become pregnant, right? So that's how they laughed. That was he came from 770. He had no idea what the reference of college students in the 70s was to the pill. That's what it referred to. So this was the culture of the college campus scene in the 70s and really in the 60s and 70s. It was a very, very secular grub culture. Anyway, Bekitzer, so Schwartz, I come into the office, he's on the phone. And he takes him, says, Chaim, you want to go to Marin County? I didn't ask him where Marin County is, what Marin County is. They need a rabbi, they need someone to play rabbi for the Shana Yom Kippur. You want to do it? I said, sure. I had no idea, I heard of San Francisco, but Marin County, I never heard of Marin County. And I went out, but I needed someone to play Gabbai and play Chazan. I can't do everything, you know? If I'm going to give the drasha and be the Baltekei and be the Balkaida, I need someone to help sing and daven for the Amid. And I took a boy, a bacher named Mendel. This bacher came from hippie parents. He became a Baal Teshuvah. His parents were hippies in the 60s. And they still lived like hippies. He was the scholar by Chabad in Long Beach, California. And he became a Baal Teshuvah. And I'm telling you this because he had sich angechappet in me, he had sich zugeklebt in me, and he wanted to learn Nigunim. And I taught him Nigunim, and he was so enamored with the Nigunim. Then later, he lost touch with us, and I don't know where he is today, but I'm telling you this. But I'm convinced, because he was really a strong Baal Menagin, that the Nigunim that he learned when we were in yeshiva together, this will pile on him to do tshuva wherever he is in the world. I don't know. I'm convinced that the Nigunim will talk one day to him and will give him a yisayrus, and he'll come back. He'll come if it's chapen tzidik. Because a nigun of the neshama, a nigun that comes from the neshama, talking about a nigun from the neshama, not just another lie. A nigun that comes from the neshama, and the person who makes the nigun is a Baal neshama. There's a Yid in Borough Park. He's one of the biggest Bekiim in manuscripts. His name is Lazer Katzman, Rav Lazer Katzman. He's around the corner from me. So he told me that he had a yechidus with the Rebbe in 1967. He was getting married. I forget, to a Rav's daughter. He was a Talmud Chacham, and he was a Talmud Chacham, and he had relatives Lubavitcher, so he wanted they should play the Alter Rebbe's Nigun at the wedding, the Balatanya's Nigun. The girl, we sing, Imeshkochech and this and that. And then Shlomo Karlbach's Nigunim were getting very popular, were popular. So she said she wants a Nigun for Shlomo Karlbach to be played. So he didn't know what to do. He Evil Alter Rebbe's Nigun. And he wasn't a Lubavitcher. But, he had feelings and he had verstanden and he had relatives. He went into Yechidus with the Rebbe. And he asked the Rebbe, is it a minig? He told me this himself. This is the question. Is it a minig Chabad that you must play the Alter Rebbe's Nigun at a Lubavitcher wedding? At a wedding. At a Lubavitcher wedding. So the Rebbe did not answer him. It's a minik Chabad that you must play the Alter Rebbe's Nigun, although you guys all know that at every Lubavitcher wedding they play the Alter Rebbe's Nigun under the chuppah. That's the only Nigun that we play under the chuppah of Lubavitch. But the Rebbe said like this: "What is a Nigun? What's a Nigun? A Nigun is the pen of the soul, the neshama red, right? A Nigun is how the neshama drikt zuchus, how the neshama expresses itself." So the Rebbe said, listen to the vertes, gewaltige Werte. The Rebbe said like this: As ihr wilt, if you want, the Balatanya der Alte Rebbe, seine Neshama soll sein bei eurer Chuppe, spielt the Alte Rebbe's Nigun, play the Alte Rebbe's Nigun. As er wilt, he didn't say Shlomo Kalbach, I don't know if he said Shlomo, but he said, as er wilt, a zweitens Neshama soll sein dort, spielt sein Nigun. Now, if you have to touch up this word that the Rebbe said, it's not to put down to Shlomo, to him or there. The word is that, can you compare to the Alter Rebbe? I mean, can you compare a Nigun from the Alter Rebbe to anyone? I mean, it's the Alter Rebbe. Or let's say the Bozhitzer Rebbe. I mean, a Great Tzaddik. A Great Tzaddik who makes a Nigun, the Nigun is a tool to his neshama. It's not the pshat that here's someone has a good musical understanding and has good tunes, v'chulu, and makes a nigun. That's not what a Lubavitcher nigun is, and the truth is that's not what the nagina was in Beis Hamikdash. Nagina comes from the inside of the Levim, the neshameret. Had a mashpir, Rabbi Avram Mayor, the Drizzen family. Rabbi Avram used to always say, the neshama pump it. He had an expression, I know anyone ever. A nigun is the neshama pumps, the neshameret. The neshama. No. So that Chaim was a long explanation of the importance of singing Nigunim, teaching your children Nigunim, specifically Lubavitch Nigunim and Chassidish Nigunim, and because you know that if I told you the history of some of these Nigunim and the Mechabrim, you would be amazed. These were Yidden that didn't have what to eat, didn't have what to sleep, where to sleep. And they davened for 4 or 5 hours with this Nigun, which is called the Shtapkus HaNefesh. It's a gewaltige Sach. It's unbelievable. Yeah. The Gaguyim, the yearning, the Gaguyim, the yearning to sein verbunden mit dem Ebersten. You know, it's like a friend of mine says, when's the last time, excuse the expression, you had a love affair with God? You have a love affair with your pillow. I mean, you grab your pillow, and grab the pillow. What are you grabbing the pillow? Grab God. Grab the Eberstein. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a Yid that makes a nigun like that. It's a whole different. It's a whole different world. And when you sing that nigun and you was mishbeinin and you're metabik in that nigun, it rubs off. And if it doesn't rub off today, it rubs off tomorrow. And that's why I tell you, when I was a child and I was growing up, I didn't want to sit at the table to hear my father's Nigun Dorten. But years later, and then that's it. So anyway, long drasha, but that's the importance. Een van de zaken van Nigun. Yeah.